Getting started today, we're going to do an Aquatint print. Now, if you've watched other videos, you have seen this plate show up. I started with a photograph of my house and I used some Surreal transfer paper to put an image onto my hard grounded plate. And here's my hard grounded plate with some very simple lines drawn in with an etching needle. And now I'm using a little bit of our stop-out varnish asphaltum to protect the plate. We're going to skip a bunch of the steps involved with etching it and go right to the first proof of this plate because the point of this video is to talk about Aquatint. We're going to add some values to this print. So I printed a couple in its earliest iteration so that I really knew what the plate had to say, and then I've moved over to regrounding the plate and adding a bunch of new drawing, stopping it out, etching it, cleaning it, and then taking a proof. And here it is. It looks decent, but it really is just the lead up to the Aquatint. So it's really important after cleaning the plate, after printing it in particular, that we degrease it thoroughly because we are going to be applying an acrylic Aquatint. And if there's any grease on the plate, it's just not going to stick. So we use concentrated TSP and a clean bit of, this is just crummy paper towel, nothing special. And we're wiping the surface of the plate thoroughly before rinsing it under the sink, just like we would when we're starting with a fresh plate and we're looking for that sheet. We don't want the water to beat up, we want a nice sheet. So once we've achieved that sheet, we can then dry our plate really well, again with paper towel, nothing special, before moving over to the Aquatint station. So this is not a video on all of the little intricacies of setting up the Aquatint, but we are going to set it up in the usual fashion and get ready to spray a 50%, that is a standard Aquatint, over the whole plate as usual. So here we are covering our plate. We are not doing this in real time. Again, there's a whole video dedicated to this, but there is our initial plate with our Aquatint spray on it and all of the bits put away. And here's what the plate looks like up close, and you can see all the little speckles of paint. Now, in order to decide what kind of values we want, we have to look at our chart here. And on one of the proofs that I've printed from that plate before applying the Aquatint, I annotated it. I wrote a bunch of notes all over it telling me how long I wanted the roof to be etched and how much I wanted the front lawn and so on. And when I'm talking about how much, I'm really talking about how long I want those portions of the plate to be in the acid, because the longer they're in the acid, the deeper those little nooks and crannies become and they hold more ink, and as a result, those areas get darker. So the first thing to do at this point is to use the stop-out varnish to cover up any parts of the plate that I want to preserve in its current state. Now in this case, we know that there's really nothing there, nothing tonally in behind where I am applying the stop-out varnish, and as a result, that will remain plate tone. We could think of it as white, but really it's just areas without any additional value. And you can see I've added a few other little spots on the windows up near the top and as well near the bottom and the path. And here I'm just touching up some areas that looked a little bit thin. So this stuff is kind of goopy and it can stay wet for a while, but if we stick it very carefully in the vent here and allow a little air to pass over it, it will skin over slightly so it's a bit safer to handle. It's never going to be totally dry, or at least not for a day or two, so that's good enough. A couple of minutes, maybe 10 minutes in the fan is all we really need. And a reminder to clean your tools as you go. Even though our plan is going to require us using these tools over and over again, it's a good idea to keep them clean. So here is our plate. It's come out of the acid, and you'll notice that it is slightly discolored, and that is totally normal. That happens with copper and ferric chloride and water and oxygen. It's just a bit of oxidization. And I'm using a clean blue shop towel to very gently blot the excess water off of the plate. I don't want to damage the Aquatint paint that's still there. If you look closely, you can still see the little specks of paint that are there. And I don't want to smudge any of our blockout or our stop-out varnish, which is dry-ish but still soft. And we repeat. So here I've added more stop-out varnish to parts of the plate, and it goes into the acid, and then it comes out, and then we rinse it, and then we blot it, let it dry, and then we block out the next value, and so on and so forth. The entire process can seem to take a short amount of time, but in reality it takes quite a lot of time because you're in and out and there's an awful lot of waiting. So here's our plate after its final trip in and out of the ferric chloride, and we're going to use biodiesel and a toothbrush to remove our stop out. Now, if you are working in a studio where you're using Varsol or mineral spirits or paint thinner or something really awful like that for your health, it's going to be much quicker than biodiesel. But our biodiesel, we make it here at the university. It's non-toxic. You could theoretically drink it. Probably not going to be good for your stomach, but you could drink it. You're not going to die. And as a result, it's a little slower. But really, a couple of minutes of scrubbing and wiping, and it's all gone. Now we move on to some roller cleaner, which is just dish soap and water to take the excess oil away from the plate before our final step in getting it ready to print again, which is to remove any excess of our acrylic paint. And here's where TSP comes in again. Spray the plate with TSP. We're not really concerned about degreasing at this point. The TSP is actually just dissolving the acrylic. And there's our plate. And you can see, even uninked and in the light, that there are different values showing up on the surface of this plate. But of course, the only way to know what your plate has for you is to print it. So we're back to printing it again. And here we're printing it in black ink, and there is a first proof of the plate. And after a little consideration, partly due to the fact that my house is brown, I decided to print this in a kind of brown sepia colored ink, and I think it turned out really nice. So there is your abbreviated introduction to how to use Aquatint to create values and tones in your prints and step etch your plate. So there's one thing in looking at this video that I just made that I haven't explained, I think, clearly enough. Now, if you're in my classes, it will be clear because you'll have seen the demo and you'll have the handouts and that sort of thing. But if you're getting a refresher or you're new to this, it's important that I kind of point out one major concept here, and that is the notion of step etching. You need to internalize what step etching actually means. And that is that step etching as a process when making plates is a cumulative process. So when you have a plan, like mine, where in my case, the first value that I wanted to impart to the plate after the plate tone, which is a 0 minute, no more etching kind of a value. If like me, you have, for instance, 4 minutes as your first value, well, as you saw in the video, we block out the parts of the plate that we want to preserve as white or as plate tone, and then we're going to pop the plate into the ferric chloride, the acid, for 4 minutes. We take it out. We do all the stuff that I described in the video, rinsing with water, gently patting it dry, allowing it to dry fully, and then blocking out the next value, which I talk about throughout the video. So the idea, though, is that I'm actually blocking out those areas that I now want to preserve at 4 minutes. There's a part of the plate that's preserved at 0 minutes. That's the plate tone. But anything according to my plan that is supposed to be 4 minutes value, that very, very light gray, I need to block those out with the stop-out varnish. And then I put it into the acid for what will be the next value that I have planned. Now, in my case, my next value planned was 8 minutes. And because this is cumulative, it is really important to understand that the plate has been in for 4. We've taken it out, we've rinsed it, we patted it dry, we've blocked out those 4 minutes, and then we're going to put the plate back into the acid to bring it up to 8 minutes. It's cumulative, so that really just means another 4 minutes into the acid. Then it comes out, and then you rinse it, and then you gently pat it dry, and then you let it dry completely, and then you block out all of those parts of the print, in my case, all the parts of the image that I created that I want to preserve at 8 minutes, knowing that everything else is already covered is preserved at whatever state it was in when it was covered. Right? So for 8 minutes, that meant 4 more. We take it out, we rinse it, and so on and so forth. My third value, according to my plan, was for 15 minutes. So I hope you're starting to kind of get this. It's been in for 8 minutes. Cumulatively, it goes in for 7 more to bring us up to 15 minutes. You take it out, you rinse it, you pat it dry, you let it dry. And then in my case, I have one more value, kind of a medium darkish gray of about 25 minutes etched. And we know that the plate has been in for a total of 15 minutes. I've just blocked out all of those parts now that I want to preserve at 15 minutes, that kind of lightish, but still kind of starting to get darker gray, and the plate goes back in for 10 more minutes. That brings the plate up to a total of 25 minutes. That's the point where I then took the biodiesel and then covered the whole plate with biodiesel and used a toothbrush to remove all of that stop-out varnish from the plate. Now, if you just have 1 or 2 extra values that you want to impart to your plate, well, then you only go in and out 1 or 2 more times, depending on what your plan is. But if you have a very ambitious plan where you are going from 5 minutes all the way up to a 90-minute aquatint and a whole bunch of values in between, you really can spend all day putting the plate in, waiting for a couple of minutes, taking it back out, rinsing it, drying it, stopping out, letting that dry a little bit, then putting it into the acid. So I would say 95% of the time, all of that effort is really, really, really worth it. But it is a significant amount of effort and a significant amount of time. And that is the principle behind step etching. And that is really why, yes, sure, a standard hard ground line etching can be really exciting. But generally speaking, when you add in aquatint and all of the effort that goes into it, you can really come up with something special.